Good evening. Hope you're all doing well. Today we are learning Maseches Menachos. We're at the bottom of Kuf Gimel Amud Aleph. We're going to be covering in Mirza Hashem a lot of ground, and we're going to be getting to the bottom of Kuf Daled Amud Beis. Tomorrow we're also going to learn approximately two blot, and the game plan for this week is to finish the Masechta on Thursday. Really, the last daf is supposed to be Friday, but that of course makes Shabbos very difficult if we save a little bit of this Masechta and we have to start Chulin Daf Beis. So I'm basically just going to sleep less and prepare more. I really hope this doesn't happen, but I may have one conflicting meeting this week. But otherwise, we'll be Mirza Hashem together, just making a lot of ground, covering a lot of ground here. So we're at the bottom of Kuf Gimel Amud Aleph, and we're in the middle of a unique scenario where a person kind of spoke out of both sides of their mouth. The Mishnah toward the top of Kuf Gimel Amud Aleph painted this case as Ha'omer Harei Alai Mincha Min HaSe'orim, which is a stira. The only time we ever have Se'orim being brought as a Korban Mincha is by the Hakravas HaOmer and by the Minchas Kanaos in the case of Sota. And more broadly, we're never allowed to be Misnadev, to make an adava of a Korban Mincha that's made out of barley. There is no such thing. So this is a discussion in the Gemara here between Chizkiah and Rabbi Yochanan. Now, really where things got started over here is that our Gemara told us that in the name of Chizkiah, that if a person were to have said, not Minas Arm, but Min Ha'adashim, then it would have been a non-starter. So then we got into this whole discussion yesterday on Shabbos as to how to understand that. Now let's see Rav Yochanan's Shita. The Rav Yochanan, 10 lines from the bottom, give or take, on Kuf Gimel Amud Aleph. Rav Yochanan Amar, Afilu Min Ha'adashim. Even if you would have said Min Ha'adashim, you'd still be chayev to bring that korban. Afal pi, that adashim have nothing to do with it. It's not even like seorim, that at least you're in the right ballpark. Adashim have nothing to do with Hakravas Omer. Says the Gemara, wait a second. Michli, how do we understand Rav Yochanan? Rav Yochanan Keman Amr Lishmaite. According to whom does Rav Yochanan hold? Kebeis Hillel. What does Beis Hillel hold? We learned this yesterday. Beis Hillel holds, well, had it been that he knew that he made an error in the neder, he would have fixed it. So says the Gemara, Beis Hillel Mishum Detoihu. Beis Hillel, his whole mindset is about Mishum Detoy, that he made a mistake. So b'se'orim toy, I could understand if a person says se'orim, they're not such a Talmud Chacham. They're like, barley's sounds great. Okay, they're stickle am haaretz. But to say adashim, you're more than an am haaretz. You're a ksil. You're totally ridiculous. So really, adashim lo toy. So how do we understand Rav Yochanan? If Rav Yochanan is really a Beis Hillel Yid, and Beis Hillel would have had a limiter to say that I have a limit to you making an error. Adashim is too big of an error. Then what's Rav Yochanan talking about when he says that with Adashim, you'd still be chayav a korban? It should have been ruined according to Rav Yochanan, who holds like Beis Hillel. So it says the Gemara, Rav Yochanan wasn't talking about his own shita. Rav Yochanan is party line with Beis Hillel, and exactly like the language of the Mishnah, only if you said Harei Alai Mincha Mina Se'orim would that be valid. But if I would have said Adashim, Rav Yochanan in the camp of Beis Hillel would have said too much of a mistake, no neder is chal. Really, what was Rav Yochanan doing? He wasn't talking about his own shita, but rather L'dvar Chizkiah Ka'amar Le. Rav Chizkiah basically had told us initially that he held like the language of Tafas Lashon Rishon, if you'll recall from Shabbos, that if you look back at that first line of the Mishnah of Harei Alai Mincha Min HaSe'orim, Beis Shammai was of the opinion of Tafas Lashon Rishon. It's basically Palgin on Dibura. We look at the guy's phrase, Harei Alai Mincha on the one side, Givaldik, Min HaSe'orim not so Givaldik. But a Beis Shammai Yid would say Tafas Lashon Rishon. So says the Gemara that Rav Yochanan, when he said that even Adashim should work, he was saying within Chizkiah. What did Chizkiah do yesterday? He said, oh, you're right. If it really was the case that we held like Beis Shammai, our Mishnah would have given the more novel, the more chiddushdik case of Min HaAdashim, but it didn't. Must be that I'm wrong and we don't hold like Beis Shammai. Rav Yochanan says to Chizkiah, no, it could even be Beis Shammai. Because at my time of Hadras, why did you, Chizkiah, say, no, I can't hold like Beis Shammai anymore, who holds Tafas Lashon Rishon, because Mishum Delok Tani Min HaHadashim, because the more novel case wasn't taught in our Mishnah. So says Rav Yochanan, Dilma, perhaps, Lomi Boya Ka'amar. Maybe our Mishnah is actually structured as a Lomi Boya. Don't tell me this because it's obvious, but even that, which is less obvious, that's the structure of a Lomi Boya. And how does Rav Yochanan push back on on Chizkiah. He says you never should have given up on Beis Shammai. You should have held toughest lashon rishon all the way to the finish line. Why? Because Dilma Lomi Boya Kamar. Lomi Boya min ha'adashim. That's obvious. That for sure. The Ikalamemar Mahader Hu Hadar Bey. And V'tavas Lashon Rishon. I could understand that Beis Shammai would say Tavas Lashon Rishon. I don't care what your second thing is, even if it's ridiculous. Ella afilu min ha'seoranami di Ikalamemar mitahu dekatoi filu hachi Tavas Lashon Rishon. In other words, in short, we always could have stuck with Beis Shammai. So Rav Yochanan is pushing back on Chizkiah, saying, I don't understand. You were concerned that we couldn't hold like Beis Shammai because our Mishnah taught the less novel case of Min HaSeorim and not the more novel case of Min HaAdashim. Says Rav Yochanan, if only you would have looked at it a little bit differently, that you would have said that really it's just a Lo Mibaya, you could have held like Beis Shammai. Why did you back down? That's how the Gemara ends. So this is Rabbi Yochanan not saying his own shita. Rabbi Yochanan holds like Beis Hillel all the way, which means that he holds that there's a limit to the corrective measures of a neder. So if I say Harei Alai Mincha, min ha bowling balls, min ha adashim, things that are totally out of left field, Beis Hillel says, look, people make mistakes, but not that kind of mistake. You're totally off. It doesn't make any sense. But Rabbi Yochanan held that Beis Shammai Dafka could have done that because Tafus Lashon Rishon is a mechanism in halacha. Your first words were perfect. You clearly wanted to bring a mincha. You just don't know anything about a korban mincha. You go out to the boondocks. Somebody says, I want to bring a sacrifice to a Kadosh Baruch Hu in the times of the Beis HaMikdash. They don't know an aleph from a Beis. Okay, maybe if they're pure Am Haaretz, maybe pure, Tinok Shenishpa territory, maybe that's nachal. That's not who we're dealing with. This guy's an Erlicha guy. He just doesn't know. It slipped out of his mouth. Mino Adashim. So Rabbi Yochanan says, you, Chizkiah, should have stuck to your guns, because Rabbi Shammai really could have held that way. That brings us to the top of Kuf Gimel Amud Beis. Let's continue right at the top of the page with an interesting line. Amar Zeiri, Lo Shanu, when do we have all the dinim of our Mishnah? That's only true, and I should actually add in Rashi here, because Rashi shows us who Zeiri holds like, bringing back Beis Shammai. Rashi, Lo Shanu, the toughest Lashon Rishon. That's Beis Shammai. It's Chizkiah within the new Rav Yochanan. Says the Gemara, Amar Zeiri, Lo Shanu, Ela de Amar Mincha. That's only if you say Harei Alai Mincha, followed by something unreasonable, such as Min HaAdashim or Min HaSeorim. Aval, Lo Amar Mincha, if you didn't say Mincha as an isolated phrase, then Lo. So this is a diun here in the Rishonim. Even within Rashi, there's Shtei Lashonos here. Let's go with the Pashtos. There's two versions. If I say Harei Alai Mincha, phrase one. Phrase two, Min HaSeorim. That is a classic case of Tafas Lashon Rishon. If, however, I say Harei Alai Minchas Seorim, they're not separate phrases. They're enmeshed phrases. Harei Alai Mincha over here, followed by Min HaSeorim over there, Tafas Lashon Rishon. But says Zeiri within Beis Shammai, if I say, Harei Alai Minchas Seorim, where the word Mincha is not standing on its own, I can't do Tafus Lashon Rishon, because Mincha and Seorim are tied together. So therefore, Lo, says the Iri, you can't say Tafus Lashon Rishon. Yosef Rav Nachman Nekal Amar La Hashmaisa. He was teaching over this din of Zeiri, and Esvei Rava Rav Nachman. Rava was sitting in shiur. Rava 4th century Amoraim, and Rav Nachman was 3rd. So Rava learned under Rav Nachman. He says to him, I don't understand Zeiri. What did our Mishnah say? Kemach Yavi Soles. If a person makes a neder that they're going to bring flour, so flour in the word of kemach is the wrong word. Kemach we actually assume to be the lesser part of actual flour. Modern Hebrew, we do use the word kemach for flour. But really you need soles. So says Rava, I don't understand. And Zeiri said you had to say the word mincha. And here we have a shtickle gears to change 4th line. My lav de lo amar mincha. Isn't it true that the case of kemach, that he still brings solas? Where does it say the word mincha over there? So Zeiri's principle is wrong. Says the Gemara, no, lo. Really you did. Harei alai mincha min hakemach. Lo. De amar mincha. So no, Zeiri still stands strong. Next, the next part of the Mishnah says, below shemen ulavona. The Am Haaretz guy says, Harei alai, to bring this without shemen and levona. So says the Gemara, what should he do? Yavi shemen ulavona. My lav de lo amar mincha. Maybe this case, says Rava, was a case where no mincha was mentioned, which also bursts the bubble potentially, havamina, bursting the bubble of Zeiri's theory that mincha has to be mentioned for Tafas Lashon Rishon. Says the Gemara, there was, lo, to Amar Mincha, even by the case of below Shemin Ulavona. There he did say Harei Alai Mincha. What about the next in of the Mishnah, where it said Chatzi Isaron, the person's Tanam Haaretz? We know that an Isaron is the minimum shiur. We know that it's a minimum shiur for a korban mincha. So this guy says, Harei alai chatzi isaron. What does that sound like? Amaratzos. And what's the din? You have isaron shalom. You have to bring an isaron shalom. Rava says again, my lav de lo amar mincha. No, lo de amar mincha. Says the Gemara, ihachi, if all of this is true, that he said chatzi mincha, and you have to bring a mincha, then ema seifa, then I don't understand the end of the Mishnah that we learned yesterday on Shabbos. What did the Mishnah say? Isaron umechza. If a person says, I'm going to bring an isaron and a half of isaron yavi shnayim, says the Gemara, I don't understand. If you say tafus lashon rishon, then kevan de amar mincha or harei alai mincha, that phrase alone, what does that obligate you to? Ichayev le bi isaron. But then ki amar chatzi isaron lo klum ka amar, delete the word hu. If I then say isaron umechza, the isaron, because it's tafus lashon rishon, so it should just be that I'm only chayav one, yet our Mishnah says you're chayav two. Why would that happen? If tafas lashon rishon is true, then I don't care what you said the second time around. The second half of your sentence is irrelevant. Says Gemara, lo tzricha. Actually, what we're dealing with in our Mishnah was where the words were reversed. To Amar, harei alai mincha, first he said chatzi isaron, and then he said v'isaron. And in that case, to kevan de amar mincha harei alai mincha on the toughest lashon rishon side of the equation, ichayev le v'isaron. Ki amar chatzi isaron, the next half of this phrase was irrelevant, v'lo klum ka'amar, because there's no such thing as a chatzi isaron. But he kept talking. And then ki hadar amar isaron, maisi isaron acharina. So really, the case of our Mishnah was not where he said, isaron umechza. It was harei alai mincha b'chatzi isaron umechza. The chatzi isaron was dissolved in the toughest lashon rishon, but he kept talking and added an isaron. Harei alai mincha isaron number one. Chatzi isaron is 0. The last phrase of isaron brings us to 2, and that's how we understand our Mishnah. Says the Gemara, hold on. Ihachi, that this answer is true, that our Mishnah really had the case of harei alai mincha b'chatzi isaron ve'isaron. If that's true, then why was Reb Shimon poter shelo hisnadev kederach hamisnadvin? Why would you say that? At the end of the day, you said enough that should have been mechayev you. So Amar Rava, Reb Shimon, b'shitas Reb Yosi Amra. Reb Shimon holds of the shita of Reb Yosi, one that we saw many years ago. To Amar, af bigmar dvarav adam matfis. Your whole sentence has to make sense. And if you were to say anything that you said in our Mishnah, whereas the Tanna Kama was comfortable, Reb Yosi was not. You cannot talk out of both sides of your mouth. If you make a neder and a dava, harei alai mincha, don't follow it with gobbledygook. It has to be crystal clear and accurate. Be'isaron, bisoles, whatever the right words are. But don't tell me that you're allowed to say chatzis. None of that. He doesn't agree with any of that. Once you add in an element to your nadava that's wrong, done, upslugged. The whole thing is gone. That is the sheet of Reb Yosi. And Reb Shimon in our Mishnah, looking back to Kuf Gimel Lamed Aleph in the Mishnah, which was the closeout of our Mishnah, he rejects all the previous cases, at least it seems that way from over here, because he holds in this closing line that Bigmar Dvarav Adam Matfis. The whole phrase matters. Harei alai mincha, part 1. Part 2 has to be coherent. It has to be halachically accurate. Next Mishnah, third of the way down, Kuf Gimel Lamed Beis. Let's continue. We have a lot of ground to cover. Misnadev Adam Mincha Shel Shishim Isaron. A person is allowed to donate a korban mincha of 60 isaron, maybe b'kli echad. And you can even have a 60 isaron kli if there was such a thing. Didn't seem that we ever had such a thing, but if you did have one, you could use it. Skip the parentheses. However, with a slight change. Im Amar, harei alai samech aleph. If he says, nope, I want to have 61 esronos, so maybe he's allowed, but it's shishim b'kli echad, ve'echad b'kli echad. You can't bring a 61 in a kli. You have to do 60, and then separately you have to do 1. You know what? When you're dealing with these measures, who cares if you do 60 or 61? Why is the Mishnah being mechalek that if I make an adava to do 60, no problem, all in one kli, 61, that's where I draw the line. Now you can't do 61. Says the Gemara, So why is that? Shekain, halfway down on the page, Hatzibor maybe b'yom tov harishon shel chag shechalios b'Shabbos shishim echad. When Sukkot, which is chag, referenced in Mishnais, when Sukkot overlaps with Shabbos, when the first day of Sukkot overlaps with Shabbos, the korbanos mincha aggregated by all of the animals on that day is 61 esronos. And dayo leyachid shu pachos min hatzibor echad. It's not shaykh. It's not shaykh that you as a yachid giving an adava should give the isronos in the same volume that the tzibur would give on Yom Tov Rishon Shel Chag Shechalios B'Shabbos. Pasnisht. It's like that story about I think it was Rav Yaakov Kamenetsky. He was driving with someone and they were going to pull in front of the bus. Rav Yaakov said to the driver, Yachid v'rabim, halacha kirabim, let the bus go first. It's not shaykh that we should bring a korban in the volume that is actually brought. Whatever the maximum ceiling is of a korban mincha, which is 61, Yom Tov Rishon Shel Chag Shechalios B'Shabbos, no yid can bring that much in one kli. Therefore, 60 in one cup, one in another. Reb Shimon, that makes no sense because you're not really bringing it that way on Yom Tov Rishon Shel Chag Shechalios B'Shabbos. Why? Reb Shimon, v'halo elu leparim ve'elu lekvasim. There were different animals. And the mixtures of those korbanos were different. The para mincha was more dry. The kvasim mincha was more moist. If you mix them all up, so then what you'd end up having is part of the 60 should have been more moist. Part of the 60 should have had no oil. If that's true, then when you mix them all up, you're not yotzei anything. So pashat, they were not brought that way. So the Ella, what does he say? Ad shishim yecholim libalel. The reason why we don't bring 61 is not because it's one less than the tzibur. The reason why we don't bring 61 is because it won't mix. The amount of oil in 61 relative to the flour, it's not mixable. It will just become super clunky. Over Pesach, a year ago, I made pancakes. I didn't read the instructions. I dumped the whole contents of the pancake bag, but I only put in the measurement of one serving. It was actually a 2-serving flour. I'm stirring and stirring and stirring. It's a glob. It's a clod. I couldn't even work with it. Well, you can't make a pancake like that. It would look like dirt. Why? Because I didn't have enough oil for the flour. Says Reb Shimon, the reason why you can't have a yid donate 61 is mathematical. It's scientific. You just can't make it a mixture. It's not possible. There's not enough oil. Says the Gemara, Amrulo, they said to Reb Shimon, Shishim nivlalim, v'shishim ve'echad ein nivlalim. You're going to tell me that the 160th edition, now you can't mix it? We can talk to the scientists in the room, solutes and solvents. At some point, that's correct. You cannot mix it anymore. That's exactly right. That's what the Gemara says here. The Mishnah says, Omar lahem, Rav Shimon says to him, Kol midos chachamim kain. Every time the chachamim gave us a shiur, it was categorical. It was a ceiling. What does that mean? Be'arbaim sa hu tovel. Go, jump in a mikvah when there's 40 sa. But, ube'arbaim sa chaser kartov, you're missing one drop. Eno yachalit bal bahen, and she's a nida, mida oraisa, chayiv kares, the whole 9 yards. So yeah, that's exactly right. Reb Shimon says you're not able to do 61 because the mixing won't work. There's not enough liquid. There's not enough solvent relative to the solute. It just does not work. That brings us to a Gemara that is nearly, it's not identical in words, but the concept is exactly the same. There was a question that was brought to Rabbi Eloi. That was our Mishnah. Somebody is misnadev to bring 61 measures of a korban mincha, 61 esronos of a korban mincha. So the din is 2/3 of the way down, getting to the end of the thin lines. Maybe shishim b'kli echad be'echad b'kli echad. How do we know? Pasach Rabbi Bar Eloi. Rosh Hamadabrim b'chol makom. He's the first one that gets to speak. Ayin in the Rishonim here about that phrase. V'omar sheken batzinu tzibor miviin b'yom tov rishon shel chag shechalios b'shabbos shishim echad. Dayo liyachid sheyivchos min hatzibor echad. The first approach that we saw in our Mishnah. Why can't you bring 61? Because the tzibor on Yom Tov Sheni on Yom Tov Rishon shel chag shechalios b'shabbos brings 61. Pasnisht. You're a yachid. That's a rabbim. You should not be bringing what the Beis Hamikdash brings. It's not right. Omar li Reb Shimon, just like we saw in the Mishnah. That's not true. That's not accurate. It's not brought that way. Says the Gemara, 2 lines into the middle with lines. Amar le Reb Shimon, v'alo elu parim ve'elu ve'elu kvasim. There are different types of korbanos. The parim are drier types of menachos, and the rams are more moist. Elu blilasan ave, some are thicker. Ve'elu blilasan raka, some are thinner. Elu blilasan shachris, ve'elu blilasan ben arbaim. Ve'ein nivlalim mizeh al zeh. For three reasons, much more detailed than we saw in our Mishnah. There's many reasons why we know that on Yom Tov Rino Shachag Shechalish B'Shabbos that they didn't bring 61 esronos together. You couldn't do it. The math didn't math. You couldn't do it. It was impossible. They always broke it up into pieces. So therefore, the Gemara says, and this should be a correction, Amar lo. Reb Shimon barks back, and what does he say to Rabbi Yehuda Bar Ilai? Emor ata. Okay, give up an answer. Amar lahem, Arehu, what should we say? Harehu Omer, v'chol mincha balula b'shemen v'chareva. Kvar amra Torah, have mincha sheichol lihibalel. We have to bring a korban mincha that's stirrable, that's mixable. That when we add the requisite amount of oil to the requisite amount of flour, it's mixable. But here, 61 is not mixable. Omar le b'shishim nivlalim b'shishim ve'echad ein nivlalim? Really? That's the line in this end? Answers the Gemara, yes. Omar lo kol midas chachamim kenu bar ba'im so tovil bar ba'im so chasar kortov enu yachal litbo. Yeah, exactly right. Continuing with another example that we didn't have in our Mishnah. Kibetz matame tumas ochlin. When we talk about being matame, the minimum shiur that a food that's tame can be matame other foods. We spent time talking about this over the last many pages. Do we say that no sar is matame tumas ochlin? Do we say all the different things we learned about? So here, what about it has to be a kibetza, which is two kizesim, two slices of bread by volume. Kibetza mitame tumas ochlin, but guess what? Kibetza chaser shum shum. It's missing one sesame seed size amount. It's minuscule. Doesn't matter. Ein mitame tumas ochlin. Another example. Shlosha al shlosha mitame medras. A cloth that's 3 by 3. That is going to be mitame tumas medras. But guess what? Shlosha al shlosha chaser nima achas. It's missing one thread. You're below the threshold. Yes, we're very black and white. You put one toe on that 3-point line, now it's a 2-pointer. That's how things work in the Gemara. Kol midas chachamim kain, and therefore ain't matame tumas medras. So what we see in the Gemara is this approach, this whole discussion around, if I am misnadev 61, what am I supposed to do? The answer is you don't bring 61. Why? Is it because Pashne said Yachid should bring what would happen on Yom Tov Rishon Shel Chag Shechalish Shabbos? Seemingly, Reb Shimon, that's still the Tanakama. Reb Shimon says it's not because of that. It's because Ein Nivlalan, it doesn't mix properly. Says the Gemara, who cares if it doesn't mix properly? Ein Nivlalan my have. Who cares if it's chunky and clunky and cloddy? What's the difference? The korban mincha doesn't have to be perfect. V'atnan, we have a Mishnah. Im lo balal kosher. So what do you care? Do the 61. Reb Shimon, you said don't do the 61 because it doesn't mix. Who cares? Do the 61 and it won't mix. So says the Gemara, one of the most well-known principles that we are familiar with in this world, and we extrapolate it to other places and use it all the time. Amar Reb Zera, kol hara'ui lebila ein bila me'akeves. If it's at least conceptually, scientifically possible that it could all stir in, then we don't care. However, but if it's not able to be mixed, then when it's not mixed, it's problematic. The only leniency of it not being mixed is if the solutes and solvents stir properly. Here at 61, they don't, and at 60, they do. That's why Reb Shimon is being such a stickler. 7 lines from the bottom on Kuf Gim Lamed Beis, the Gemara tells a little bit of a story. Amar Abibi, Amar Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi, Maisa, bepreda achas shel beis Rebbe Shemesa. There was a preda, there was an animal, a donkey that died. V'shiaru chachamim es dama b'revi'is. And the amount of blood that exited the body upon death was 1 revi'is. Now that's a big problem. When we talk about blood from an animal that's an avela, what is the volume of blood that we need in order for that to be mitame other things? The halacha is that it's a revi'is. Why? Because when a revi'is congeals, it yields a kizayas. And that is therefore mitame tumas ochlin. Fine. Actually, it should be a kibetza, no? From what we just learned. Rashi says kizayas. The end of Rashi, Dibra Maskal Berevi'is says, the shiur derabanan he revi'is dam yochol likrosh v'lamod al kizayis. Just a steer to the Gemara we saw above, no? We said that it's a kibetza is metame tumas ochlin. Maybe it's not metame tumas ochlin. Maybe it's just tame. It's just transfer of tuma. I don't know the answer to the question. Didn't think about it while I was preparing. Let's continue. Yep.
When was it? You have a medrash, right? measures, right? And it's 3 by 3, and it's a little bit less than that.
One thread.
Right. The difference between 60 and 61 is actually pretty substantial. I would think we should say 60.99 to 61.
That is true. No, 59.99 to 60.
Fine, but
Yeah.
60 to 61. In that world between 60 and 61, that's like a no man's. Like here, one thread I could hear.
Why do you see a difference between the cases at all?
That one.
Oh,
It's a much larger piece, and so it's like if you're going to be exactly to a thread piece.
one sesame seed you're talking about. Yeah.
61 should be 60.
Yeah.
Fresh.
Right. Well, it's true, but I hear I wouldn't have thought of what you're saying until you said it. Now that I hear what you're saying, I appreciate that a lot. I would have answered that the Gemara means 50.999. That's what it meant by saying not 61.
60-20.
Or 60 point.
Still be a problem. Nobody talks that way.
No,
I think that's all I'm saying.
Right.
But we talk about one thread.
Correct.
Agreed.
But in this space of esronos, and an isaron is large, masking.
Right.
But maybe it should have said, what one granule of flour. Maybe the Gemara.
Because it walks that way. This is totally in talking. The 3 by 3 is totally in the shear that you might see.
Right. So anything less than that,
Right.
that 3 by 3
Right,
is
just
what
the way people talking.
So just to your point,
1,000,000% correct.
Right.
it's definitely correct.
001
Yeah.
is a regular problem.
The margin of error of one thread is way smaller than 1/60th. The margin of a sesame seed is many, many hundreds against the one. In here, it's 1/60th. So what does it mean when it says 60 yes, 61 no? Is it 60.00? Is it 59? I know, but I don't know. I know, but now I don't know where the line is. Is it 60.99 or is it 59.99? That's to your point. Because are we saying 61 is the problem? I think it's 59.9. 59.
That's where it trips it.
59.99 is acceptable. And 60.
60.
I think 60 is.
60 is. But 60 per hour.
I think it.
You were saying
What does 60 mean?
Exactly.
Right.
0.00.
Yeah, 0.00.
Yes.
But once you get to 001,
I heard that.
it's probably just nobody talks that way, so you go to the next whole number. But I assume the line is one of the Gemara is the line is the line. I think you're correct. That
Anything over 60, you're done.
It's not going to work.
You don't have to go up to 61 to trip. Right. Okay.
And I think maybe the Gemara's point is, even if you take it into a lab and disprove me, it doesn't matter. This is the way the Chachamim.
For sure that's true. Yeah, I mean that the lines are not going to change. It's
Two molecules are exactly the same. So
although we do know that even one granule of salt could ruin a korban mincha, so we knew that they were pure in that way. And they were menapa 30 yud gimel pa'amim, like we said earlier, that they were filtered so many times. Yeah, very good question. It didn't even cross my mind. That's great. I still don't know. I hear you on the 60, but Libi Omerli that it's 59.99 because it's not. I don't know. Okay, Amar Rabibi, there was this animal. Fine, says the Gemara that the animal died and it was a revius of dam, and now it's metame tumas ochlen. I'm sorry, it can be metame rishon sheni v'chule. Masiv Rav Yitzchak bar Bizna. Hey, Rabbi Yoshua, Rabbi Yoshua ben Beseira, al dam nevelos shu tar. I disagree. They say that any share of dam nevelos is going to be tar. Vam Rabbi Yoshua ben Beseira. Maisa, there was a story. V'hayu nochrin arudios. Nechira is killing an animal not with shchita. That's how in secular America, outside of our community, I believe what they do is they put a spear straight through the eyes into the brainstem. I believe something along those lines, and the animal dies very, very quickly. Either way, nechira arudios. Arudios are donkeys, and they would kill these animals in a non-shchita way. Le'arios istaria, and they would do it to give to the lions that were, kind of getting in the face of the army. Shel melech. And vahayu ole regalim shokin ad rechovos sehen bedam v'lo amar lehem davar. They were up to their ankles in blood, and nobody said boo. Nobody talked about tuma. So clearly, we see against what we saw from Rabbi Bibi in the name of Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi, who said that shi'aru chachamim es dama b'revi'is. Well, we have this story, which seems to be that even gallons and gallons and gallons and 6 inches worth of blood over the entire earth. Imagine when someone says there's 6 inches of rain. That's massive amounts of water. So says the Gemara, nothing. Obviously, there's no tumah. So Ishtik, he was silent. I wonder, Zrika, my time, why didn't you say anything? So he said, the short answer, and then we'll go through the psukim, is that he said, I'm very poor, and as we'll soon see in Rashi, ve'ein daito miyushav lahashiv lo. Well, let's see what the story is. Amar le, hachi ahadar le. This was the response. The Amar of Chanin, Amar le, sorry, hechi, thank you. Hechi ahadar le, how can I respond? The Amar of Chanin, the pasuk says, and this is the tochacha from Sefer Dvarim. The full pasuk reads, v'hayu chayecha tiluyim lecha mineged ufachadata laila v'yomam. Below Sa'amin b'chayecha. Now let's learn it in a piecemeal. That's a Jew who's poor, who doesn't have his own field, and because he doesn't have his own field, he has enough money to buy from year to year. He's not house poor, he's not completely poor, but he doesn't have a field of his own. The next level is worse. I have to buy every week, but I don't have stockpiles of food. And velo should be velo. The pasuk says velo. Velo tamin bechayecha ze somech al paltar. Every day I have to buy new food. What am I supposed to do? I only have a couple of agurot. I have no choice. So it says the Gemara, and he was talking about himself. Ve'ahu gavram, and Rashi says adi deka amar. Ve'ahu gavra back in the Gemara al paltar samech. And therefore, as Rashi points out in the top at the end of that Rashi, ve'in daitim yushav lahashiv. I don't have the headspace. Anyways, Lamaisa, what's the day? That's why I didn't answer him about the case, but there is an answer. Says Gemara, my Havela, how do we paskin in regards to whether or not a revius of dam by an avela is going to be metame? Rav Yosef, Rav Yehuda, who was Moriana de Benesia, Moriana from the word more, he was the posek actually of the Benesia. Hava, that's what his job. The Ori la kishmaite, and he had his own shita. Ditnan. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, Shisha Dvar Mikule Beis Shammai Mechumre Beis Hillel. There are 6 things that we learned from Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel. There were the Kule of Beis Shammai and the Chumras of Beis Hillel, which was rare. Dam Nevelos was one of them. Beis Shammai Mitarin and Beis Hillel Mitamin. And so he holds like Beis Hillel. Amar Rabbi Yossi, Amar Rabbi Yehuda, Af Kshatimu Beis Hillel, even with Beis Hillel, Lo Timu Ela Biravis, Hol V'yachol Dekrosh V'lamad Al Kazais. So we see over here that we do seem to paskin like Beis Hillel, that it would be Tameh. Good. Last Rashi. Yeah. Yeah, I don't understand. I don't know. I mean, the Gemara calls it, says Kibetza.
So too.
It does. Halfway through the middle with lines. Kibetza metame tumas ochlen. And Kibetza chaser shumshim. But this is not, I don't think this is talking about being metame tumas ochlan. I think it's talking about like a tumas mace, perhaps.
The tumas nevela.
The tumas nevela is talking about it's not tumas mace.
Oakland is debates of it. You and me, so to speak, is kazaz.
Yeah, I don't know the answer to the question, but I think it's me'ain that. I think it's something similar. Yeah, something like that. New Mishnah, top of Kuf Dal and Aleph. We have a ways to go. Ein misnadvin log shemen log shnayim ve'chamisha. If you want to donate wine, you're not allowed to do so. You're not allowed to do 1 log or 2 logs or 5 log. Aval misnadvin shlosha ve'arba ve'chamisha. Because the amount of wine that's in the volume of 3 lug, 4 lug, and shisha lug are for lambs, rams, and pars in that order, respectively. So the lamb is 3, the ayil is 4, and the par is shisha. So those are normal. But you therefore can't donate 1, 2, and 5. There are no korbanos that reflect that size. Umishisha ulamala. You can also do 6 and above, because then you can start adding. 6 is 2 lambs. 7 is a lamb and a ram, v'chula. You can start adding math together and it all works out. Ibailu, the Gemara asks, Yesh kevel and asachin, or kevel and asachin. Am I only allowed to give the exact amount, or Am I allowed to give a little bit extra? So it says the Gemara, Hechidami, what's the case? Could go into IC Chamisha, which our Mishnah said you're not allowed to be Misnadev Chamisha. But if you did, what would happen with it? Can you say, okay, well, 4 is going to be for an aisle and I have 1 extra? So Iyamris Ein Kevel and Asachin. If you want to say, no, it has to be an exact amount, then Mashich Umakriv Arba Aminaihu Dechazil Ayil V'idach. If you say that Ein Keva, we don't care about the amount, fine. Then you'll use the 4 for the aisle. There's 1 extra lug of wine. Good, give it to the base of Mikdash. V'yamris yesh kevel in asachin, that you have to be specific with what you donate. Then adam amale lulo karve. Then perhaps we should say that until you get the exact amount, sorry, you're not allowed to donate. Says the Gemara, Mai, what's the halacha? Amar Abaye, Toshma, answer number 1. Abaye says, Shisha linadava. This is from Maseches Shkalim. Back in the day, we remember one of the Yerushalmi Gemaras, the only Yerushalmi Gemara that we really learned, which is that there are 6 containers, they're actually shofaros, in the shape of shofaros, that people could donate to. Verminan keneged me. What were these 6 things for? Keneged mosar chatas, extras for chatas, umosar ashamos, umosar asham, asham nazir, umosar asham mitzora, umosar kinim, umosar minchas chote. Guess what's not in that list? V'imisa, that you're right, then liskin shofar achrina keneged mosar nesachim. If you want to say that you're allowed to donate extra, that ain kevel nesachim, you can donate 5, use the 4 for the aisle, give the extra, and you'll dump it in the shofar. There is no shofar for that. V'haraya must be that you're not allowed to do that. It must be yesh kevel nesachim. Says the Gemara, no. Hanach lenidvas tzibor azle. The 6 of our Mishnah from Shkalim is only for nidvas tzibor, but hani, the wine, is shchichi. That's very common that there's extra amounts of wine. And efshar demitzarfe demaru demar bahade hadade bekarve. There's nothing, you can't bring a riot from there. The fact that there wasn't a shofar to hold extra wine was because when there was extra wine, they just grabbed extra wine. David brought, Stan brought. We just combine the wine. We'll use it for the next one. Put it on the mizbech. No problem at all. So you can't bring a riot from there. Rava Omar. Rava wanted to give a second answer. We're 2/3 of the way down on Kuf Daled Amud Aleph, and he said, Toshma Ezrach. The pasuk says Ezrach. The pasuk says Kol HaEzrach Yaseh Kacha Es Ele B'Chulei. Ezrach Malame Shem Misnad V'Nesachem, that you're allowed to donate wine. V'Kama. How much? Shloshes Lugin. That part aligns with our Mishnah at the top because it says 3, 4, 6. However, uminayin shimratza lahosif Yosef. This is a different limud. How do we know that if you want to donate more than 3, you're allowed to? Talmud Omar Yehyeh. Yachal Yivchos. Maybe we can give less than 3. Talmud Omar Kacha. You're not allowed to give less than 3 because there's no weight. What are you going to do with less than 3? There are no korbanos that are less than 3. The minimum is 3, which is going to be the lamb. So says the Gemara, I don't understand. My Yosef. If you want to say that the pasuk that the Gemara quoted of Yehyeh, which taught us that you're allowed to add beyond the 3, is to teach us about 4 and 6. I don't need you to teach me that. Just like the 3 is good for a lamb, I don't need you for that. I don't need to use a pasuk for that. I know that when it comes to an aisle, that it needs to have 4 lugin, and when it comes to a par, I need 6. You don't have to give me a pasuk for the state in Chumash. I'm fine. I'm totally fine. Elolav, it must therefore be that when the pasuk says it's chamisha shmamina ein kevel nesachin shmamina. Perhaps Rava says that we're able to see from here that ein kevel nesachin, you can bring whatever you want, and the extras are fine. And Amar Rava Ashi v'ha'anan lo tnan hachi. What are you talking about? Go look at our Mishnah. Ein misnadvin log lo. You can't bring 1 log. You can't bring shnaim v'chamisha. You're telling me the drush of Yehyeh teaches me not 4 or 6, but that I can bring 5. That's exactly against our Mishnah. Katani chamisha, and that's dumya d'shnayim. Mashnayim de lo chazu klal. Just like bringing 2 is irrelevant. There's no korban that requires 2. The minimum is 3, which is going to be the keves. Af chamisha nami de lo chazu klal. 5 also has no use at all. There's no function of 5. And therefore, maybe we should say yesh kevel in a sach. It says the Gemara midi area. That can't be. How can you say that our comparison of 2 and 5 are the same? Maybe hakidisa, maybe the din of 2 is different because it's not shaykh to any korban. Bringing 2 is below the threshold of even the lowest lug amount for a korban, which is 3 for a keves. Says the Gemara, hakidisa, and 5 is a different svar. That is shaykh for 2 different korbanos. It's shaykh for the keves and shaykh for the ayil. So therefore, we cannot learn like that. Amar Abai, Im Tim Salomar ein kevel nesachin. If you want to say you can give whatever you want, then we understand all of the math. Ha ein kevel nesachin. Rashi details what exactly he means. Fine, good to go. But Im Tim Salomar yesh kevel nesachin. So if you want to say that we do need specificity, then says the Gemara, Ad asara pshitali. I understand up to 10, because you have 6 and 4 is 10. 6 is par, 4 is ayil. That makes sense. I can do the math. But says Abaye, achadasar, if you're up to 11, he said, if I say that I need to bring 11, then I don't know what to do because getting to 11 with 3, 4, and 6 can be done in multiple ways. Let's just review quickly. A keves has 3 lug, an ayil has 4 lug, and a par has 6 lug. So says the Gemara, Gavra l'shnei parim kamechavein. Do you want to say that really the guy wanted to bring 12? He only had 11, so he's not going to bring anything because it has to be the exact amount. Odilma l'shnei elim. Maybe it's 2 rams, 4 each, which is 8. V'keves, which is 11 echad. I don't know what he means. I just don't know the math. And trei mechad mina, v'chad mechad mina, amrinan olo. Are we allowed to mix animal types as we add? Don't know. Teku, we have no idea. Next Mishnah, top of Kuf Daled Amud Beis, we have to get to the bottom of the page, so let's move quickly. Misnadvin yain, as we know, we can give wine. Ve'ein misnadvin shemen divrei Rabbi Kiva. We saw this earlier in a previous Masechta and multiple times in Zvachim. Rabbi Kiva was of the opinion you cannot donate oil. Rabbi Tarfon argued, Omer misnadvin shemen, you are allowed. Omer Rabbi Tarfon mamatzinu b'yayin shu b'chovo u'banadava. Just like by wine, we see that it obviously comes when there's an obligation, and I can bring it as an adava. Av shemen shu b'chova u'banadava. The same exact thing is true. We have to bring oil for a korban mincha. So because we have to bring it for a chova, we also are allowed to bring it for an adava. So machlok is Rabbi Kiva, Rabbi Tarfon, if you're allowed to bring shemen. Amar Rabbi Akiva, lo, you misunderstood. Imamris beyayin, when we talk about wine, it's different. Because shekain karivim chavasa bifnei atzmo. If I bring a korban of an ayil, let's say, so I bring an ayil, that's my animal, and separately, in a jug, I bring 4 lug of wine. But tomar b'shemen she'eno karivim chavaso bifnei atzmo. When I bring a korban mincha with oil, where's the oil? It's mixed into the mincha. It doesn't stand alone. So Rabbi Akiva held that was the line in the sand. That's why he holds that shemen cannot be donated. Din number 1 of the Mishnah. Din number 2. Ein shnai misnadvin isaron echad. 2 Jews cannot give 1 isaron, which means 2 Jews cannot be a part of a singular mincha. Aval misnadvin, they are allowed to be a part of ola ushlamim, animals. Be'ov, birds as well. Afilu preda achas, even 1 small turtle dove, they are allowed to co-sponsor. They just cannot do a korban mincha together. The isaron cannot be split. The Gemara says, opening a third of the way down on Kuf Daled Amud Beis, Amarava midivrei shnehem nilmod. We can learn from both of them that misnadev adam minchas nesachim b'chol yom. A person is allowed to bring a minchas nesachim. Look at the words here. A mincha with wine. That's very, very rare. So says the Gemara, Pshita, why wouldn't we able to? Well, I can think of a reason, says the Gemara. Ma'udetema minchas nidava, gali barachman hani chamisha menachos in tfelo. There are only 5 types of korbanos mincha that are listed in the Torah, whatever they are, not for now. And there is not one of them that's called the minchas nesachin. So I might have thought only the 5 that are specified in the Torah are allowed, but tfelo kamash malan. That's only if I don't specify what I'm doing. But if I do specify, aval heicha de parish, if I do say that I want it to be a minchas nisachim, then it's considered permissible. That's what's extracted from our Mishnah. At the 2 dots, first of the wide lines, ein shnai misnadvin, 2 Jews are not allowed to give an isar and a flower together, which means they cannot partner in a korban mincha. Why not? My taima, ilema mishum dechsiv takriv, because it says in the singular. Well, olanami haksiv yakriv. Yet we know that in the Mishnah they are allowed to partner in an ola. That's what our Mishnah said. That aval misnadvin ola ushlamim. Ella, if you want to say ola taimamai, that it's allowed because it's dechsiv laolo sechem, because there's a plural in regards to ola. That's why you and I can partner together to give a korban ola. Well, guess what? Mincha nami also has a plural word. Haksiv lemincho sechem. Ella, says the Gemara, why is it that a mincha cannot be purchased in pairs, but that you and I cannot go in together to buy a korban mincha? Ella mishum dechsiv ba nefesh. The pasuk reads v'nefesh ki sakriv. Nefesh is singular and it refers to one person. Tanya nami hachi, the Brisa says the same thing. Rabbi Omer asher yakriv korban l'chol nidrehem u'l'chol nidvosam asher krivu l'Hashem hakol bain b'shutfis. Everything is allowed to be partnership, except that lo silika kasev ela mincha. The only exclusion to that rule is a korban mincha, which is not allowed to be brought in partnership because shneemar nefesh, because of that word. Amar Rabbi Yitzchak, b'pnei ma nishtanes mincha. Why is mincha different? Shneemar ba nefesh. It has that word nefesh. Amar Hakadosh Baruch Hu, mi darko lahavi mincha. Who is the person who most typically brings a korban mincha? Typically, that's an ani, especially by korban olav yored. And ma le'ani Allah, HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, when I look at that yid who gives a small gift of a korban mincha, ki'ilu hikriv nafsho lefanai. Wow, a person who gives even a small gift, and if all you have is a little tzedakah to give, and you give that, that's this. You gave a little bit, you gave your nefesh. That's a harder gift to give. Might even be your schar is greater. Lefum tzara agra. Amar Rav Yitzchak, mani shtanes mincha. Why is the mincha so unique in that it's such a simple korban? Yet shene'amar b'chamishim minei tigun halalu. But there's 4 different types of ways to fry it. Why do five different ways to fry? Why do we have 5 different types of a korban mincha? It's such a lowly korban. Why are there 5 of them? Mashal melch basar v'dam, says the Gemara. She'asa lo ohavo seuda. I brought you over, but I'm poor, so I only have flour. V'yodea boshu ani amar lo aseli min chamisha minei tigun kidei she'ehenem mimcha. Let's say you know that I'm poor, and you know that all I have is flour, and I have 5 unique ways to make pita bread. So you're going to say to me, Gavaldik, wow, whatever you can do, Phil, whatever you can pull off, that would be so special to me. Thank you. That's the same thing that HaKadosh Baruch Hu says. I know you're poor. I got it. 5 different types so you can show me your love. Oh, gosh. Did everybody daven Marv? Oh, okay. All right. Let's stop here. We'll be fine. Let's stop here, and when Mir Hashem, we'll pick up tomorrow night at the new parak. Hadron Allah Menachos Vanasachin. You're also we should come back to this daf. 7.5 years. Wishing you all a beautiful night.